Hi, I'm the internet's Josh Flanagan. You may recognize me from such podcasts as iFanboy and iFanboy. This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by GoDaddy.com. You can head over there and enter the coupon code iFanboy to get 10% off your purchase. Grab your own piece of the internet with GoDaddy.com. The Invisible Man.
Creepy. Welcome to iFanboy, the video podcast from the comic book discussion site iFanboy.com. I'm Ron.
I'm Connor.
And I'm Josh. This week we wanted to talk about Alan Moore. Most people who read the comics are going to tell you that he's probably
hot shit.
He's the second coming, basically, as far as comic book writers go. But if you're not really familiar with him and you've just heard the name around a lot and you don't know some of this stuff, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we really liked a lot. And
the name can be intimidating, I'll admit.
It can, yeah.
I mean, I'm new to the Alan Moore world. And,
some people think that he may be a bit overrated. And maybe we'll get into that.
Maybe we'll touch on that later.
And those wrong people are going to get their chance to talk.
But first, let's learn a little about the man.
All right. He's really interesting. Like when you start reading about Alan Moore and you come up with all sorts of things.
He's British, right?
He's sort of the precursor of the British invasion. Like without Alan Moore,
the Beatles.
Well, no, the comic book.
Okay.
Without Alan Moore, you wonder if there would have been, Grant Morrison and Mark Miller, Scottish, Garth Ennis, Irish, and all those other guys.
The whole other island.
Anyway, he was born in 1953 in Northampton, England. He still lives there. He's always lived there. He's not going to live anywhere else, which is really interesting from the point of view that he writes other people and dialects and accents really well. Like if you read
other cultures.
If you read his stuff that's based in America, it's
on.
soaked in American culture. Like he understands it really well. So that's notable in itself. And he says he's not moving. He's a vegetarian. He's an anarchist, which you may have noticed if you've read V for Vendetta.
A little political.
And he's a magician. And I don't mean like Joe Bluth. He's not like, where did the beads come from? It's not that. He's pentagrams and like
Wicca?
Dark spirits, and I
Wiccan?
don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. He's considered to be one of the most literate and erudite writers we've got. Kicked out of school at age 17 for dealing LSD. He worked a lot of odd jobs.
If you're going to get kicked out of school, I think that's one of the ways you want to be kicked out of school.
Good way to go.
Yeah, that's a good way to go.
He clearly didn't need it, by the way. He made his start working in British comics for Marvel UK.
Which was a force to be reckoned
Yeah.
with. Yeah, I mean, a lot of talent came out of Marvel.
2000 AD, same sort of thing. And Warrior Comics, and out of Warrior came stuff like V and Marvel Man, which then became known as Miracle Man here, which none of you have ever read. And then Len Wein, who was working at DC in 1983, hired him to do Swamp Thing.
Right.
To give him his start in mainstream comics, and
Which
from
is a
there,
legendary run, right?
pretty much everything he's done is legendary.
I don't know about that, but
Let's get to that point later. I'm not having that fight right now.
sure.
So one of the first books that, pretty much the first book that American audience came to know him by, unless you were a real nerd back then buying British comics, which would have been hard, was Swamp Thing, which was a horror book. Swamp Thing was...
Have you read Swamp Thing?
I've read it here and there. I've never read the entire run. I've read a couple issues here and there.
It's a horror book. It's very based in the idea of nature and... God, that sounds lame. The idea that nature is a force, is a powerful force, and basically the consciousness...
Kind of elementals, mystical.
Yeah, the consciousness of a doctor. He gets murdered brutally, and he ends up in the body of the Swamp Thing, and over time he discovers who he is, but he's not really a human. There's all sorts of things. It's exceptionally good. I mean, there's so many layers, and it's so interesting, and the art by Stephen Bissette is gorgeous. It's got that flowing nature feel of everything. There's vines and leaves and roots and stuff everywhere, and it's actually genuinely scary in parts. So it's and he was on that for a while. I think there are 5 of these trades with his. He's the sole writer.
It could say it's almost like the Godfather of the Vertigo line.
Yeah,
because it's one of the precursors to the Vertigo line.
Didn't John Constantine debut in Swamp Thing?
Yes, he did. So Alan Moore created John Constantine,
Yeah,
who I'm dressed slightly like today.
a little bit.
I know my trench coat's over there.
Stop smoking now.
Yeah,
Which is
okay.
good.
This actually probably preceded it, but V for Vendetta, which you probably all saw the film of if you
Last
hadn't,
year.
came out of the Warrior Comics line. It's It's damn good.
It's very good.
This is your favorite Alan Moore work, isn't it?
That's a hard thing to pin down, but yeah, I read it recently before the movie came out because I wanted to make sure that I
kind of represent.
Yeah.
Before the movie.
I mean, I'd owned it way before that, but I wanted to be fresh going into it, which actually sort of made me not enjoy the movie as much because I was like, well, it wasn't exactly right. But it's just this full-on, well-thought-out story. It's really revolutionary if you think about
Considering
it.
the time it was. I mean, it was it was like mid-'80s, early 80s.
Margaret
Thatcher era.
Reagan era, yeah. So.
Cold War, and it basically explores very realistically the idea of what would happen if England became a fascist state and the government were to completely take over. And it's a very dense book. And
some great visuals and great ideas put across in it. You know.
Art by David Lloyd.
Yeah, fantastic art. I actually saw an original page from this at a museum recently.
Oh, really?
It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
I gave it to a coworker recently, and she really liked it.
Really?
Non-comic readers.
Yeah, it's a story.
What did she like? The political aspect of it, or the story?
I haven't really gone in depth, but
Good story's a good story though,
Yeah.
and it's not based in anything.
Yeah.
Anybody could pick that up and read it.
I can say those masks they make. Now they're making them VV. That's freaking me out.
At the San Diego Comic Con, they're
That was-
everywhere.
you turn around, there's people that I
It's
just
like if
don't-
you've got a clown phobia,
Yeah,
it's a Guy
exactly.
Fawkes mask.
Yeah.
Learn more.
Go to your local library, look up Guy Fawkes.
And then he kind of blew up.
86 or so.
86 or so, there was a little book, which we talked about in our first show, Watchmen.
Yep.
We have really nothing left to say about it. If you don't know, then you should find out. There's the big boy down there.
Big.
The head.
Seminal title.
And one of his sort of lesser, I wouldn't say lesser known, but it's not talked about as much, little short work he did, Killing Joke.
yes.
Connor, would you like to enlighten us?
Well, The Killing Joke is, some consider the defining Joker story. And it's the de facto Joker origin, which is not... It's considered the Joker origin, but you don't know if it's actually true or not. It's a whole story. You don't know if it's all taking place in the Joker's head. It includes the iconic moment of Barbara Gordon being crippled. That's where she stops being Batgirl. She gets shot and crippled by the Joker. And
Notable also is the pencils, the entire thing,
Brian
not just
Bolland.
the cover. Brian Bolland,
Yeah.
who is, he's pretty. Like, in an era before Brian Hitch,
yeah.
I mean, like, he was like, if you could think of a guy who you wanted to pencil a book,
He's probably the best.
yeah.
He's up there. I'm not. You guys like him way more than I do, but I recognize how good he is. Yeah, he's.
Ironically, Alan Moore doesn't really like that book.
He doesn't. He thinks it's one of his weaker works. But to me, that was a book that I don't remember. Did it come up before or after Dark Knight Returns? Do we know?
It's got to be after.
after. It was
Yeah.
after.
It's grisly. Like it takes this point of view of Batman living in a dark world and the Joker. Really, for the first time that I think of
He's
reading,
terrifying in it.
It was the first thing I read where the Joker is scary. Like there's that image of him after he comes out and he's got his hands in his hair and he's sort of smiling. That's just.
Well, I mean, Brian Bolland has done a lot to really classify the Joker's look. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been all over. But Brian Bolland's look is like the classic Joker look.
It's
now.
it's not overly unhuman.
No.
It's fairly human.
Realistic.
I mean, because and you see where he came from. But it's an adult book. I'll give you that. Yeah. I remember I was like 12.
Which is interesting because
it
is in canon.
Is it?
Oh yeah, I mean that's how Barbara
that's
Gordon
what-
got crippled, and that's
Yeah.
why she's in the wheelchair.
Yeah, I mean it's
But the
it's
story
canon
about
Elseworlds.
but the story about the Joker may or may not be true.
Well, you don't know. You never know if the origin is in his head or not.
Okay.
You never know if that's really the truth.
Okay.
But it's just interesting that they dropped an adult book right in the middle.
So
of
that's
the
his
canon.
take on Batman. He hung around DC for a while.
Yeah.
And then he had a take on Superman also.
Well, actually, yeah. For those of you not familiar with the DC history, in 1986, the Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, and that was
busy in 1986.
He was, and that was where they rebooted the entire DC continuity. And the last, actually, we have it here. The last Superman story in the old continuity was a story written by Alan Moore, drawn by Kurt Swan and George Perez, called Superman: Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And it is seen as the end of the old guard of DC, the old continuity. And after this, Crisis started, and that kind of set it off. And so it's an interesting distinction to see that the last classic Superman Kurt
Silver
Swan
Age,
story,
yeah.
Silver Age story, was written by Alan Moore. And this is just a great, and it touches on Lex Luthor, Bizarro, so much of the Superman canon, all in. I think it was only a couple issues. It was like one or two issues.
It's not a dark.
No, not at
Well,
all.
that's one of the things about when people talk about great comic book writers. They say things like, "Well, he's really dark." And the thing is, Alan Moore can do dark.
He doesn't always have to do.
He doesn't always have to. He does funny. He's very funny.
He's witty.
But like when you actually get him to do superhero stories, like he grew up reading this stuff. He loves this stuff. He outgrew it. I would say that like he doesn't want to be involved with it anymore.
Right.
But you know, like he's definitely got a history with superheroes and those kind of things.
Well, it's interesting to see how the evolution goes because, you know, a lot of his early UK work, you know, he at Marvel UK he worked on Captain Britain, which was like kind of the defining run of that character, Captain Britain, who now appears in New Excalibur. And is a much different character than what he wrote. But also a lot of the work that he did on the title of Marvel Man, later renamed Miracle Man due to legal issues with Marvel, which is seen as one of the greatest superhero books.
Have you read that?
I've read issues. I haven't read the entire thing. Well, because what happened was that Alan Moore wrote the first batch of issues, and then he handed it over to Neil Gaiman. And so this constant run of Alan Moore then into Neil Gaiman, and it's supposed to be amazing. I mean, it was a reboot of characters from the 60s or 70s, kind of like similar like Shazam, you know, like Captain Marvel.
It's very Shazam-like.
Yeah, exactly. It was almost like a British amalgam of Shazam. But took it in a much modern and dark direction with the sidekick going evil, and it was amazing. And unfortunately, due to a lot of legal troubles over ownership rights and stuff like that, you just can't get it now.
They're not going to reprint it ever.
Talking to you, Todd McFarlane.
Yeah,
it's not just him.
I think I have
it's a lot.
like 3/4 of the run.
Yeah,
I may have them all in a form.
Somewhere they might have fallen off a truck.
Fallen off a truck.
Maybe.
I haven't sat down and read them though.
But it was interesting to see how, because when you think of Alan Moore's greatest work, at least up until a few years ago, you know, superheroes kind of jumped out, but you know he's kind of branched away from that.
So he leaves comics for a little while. Basically said, I'm not working for DC again. He got pissed off. He gets pissed off a lot. And that's well documented. And then he signed a deal with Jim Lee at Wildstorm Comics.
Which is still DC.
No, it was before
that. It was
DC.
before, yeah.
So he's like, hey, I'm in the clear. I'm never going to work with DC again. It's fine.
F you, DC.
Starts America's Best Comics.
A whole line dedicated to him.
From there, and then shortly thereafter, DC buys Wildstorm Comics and he finds himself. And he's like, I'll go with it for a little while. Eventually he got pissed off and now he's never going to work again for them. But out of that came if not for Vendetta, I think one of my other favorite Alan Moore projects was Top 10, which is a superhero book through and through. Basically,
totally.
There's this one city, Neapolis, and in it are every superpowered being and supernatural being and all sorts of things, and they're all in a big city.
It's kind of commonplace. People.
Yeah, and it's about
it's
the
all
police.
superpowered people,
It's all about the police precinct there. There's like every single page is jam-packed and loaded with jokes and references and ideas and things from pop culture and science fiction and TV and movies and all sorts of stuff in it. And it's like a procedural almost. It's like Homicide, but done with, I don't want to say superheroes, but they are superheroes. They all have, you know, costumes.
Well, it's like a big robot cop and a dog. And, you know,
Armageddon.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's probably the densest comic I've read.
Yeah.
It's
in
like
terms of panel structure and what's in the panel.
It's like a Where's Waldo book, right?
Yeah.
Which is actually something that's
Gene Ha on pencils. So.
It was his debut. He was really young when he did it.
No,
And
wasn't his
Xander
debut.
Cannon.
He did stuff for Marvel before.
Did he?
That. Yeah, he did.
Well, this is sort of where he came into his own.
Yeah.
One other thing about Alan Moore he's famous for is his scripts. And if you've ever heard about his scripts, what he does is he describes each panel in horrific detail.
A great example of this is if you pick up the Absolute Watchmen, there are several pages of script towards the back of it, and you can see how he's got an entire page describing the panel.
What's great is Dave Gibbons, you see they've got in color where he had a highlighter, and he just highlighted what he had to draw.
Yeah.
Like a big paragraph, and then he would just be like, room. And then just what do I need to draw in this panel? Person, room, car. And then
But it shows that everything that he does,
He thinks
from the
about it.
panel, he thinks about every possible aspect of the comic book page. He was a cartoonist before that for a little while too.
So he understands the medium. And,
I'd say.
think so.
I'd give him that.
It's an
You think?
understatement. Yeah.
And out of that also came League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which if you only know from the movie, whereas I would say that V for Vendetta was sort of a little off from the book.
Closer.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, not so
Crime,
much.
yeah.
You were a huge fan.
I love League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It was he took all these public domain characters, which he seems to enjoy, which is ironic because of his anger issues. But he took them all and put them into sort of like a super team. So you had like the Quartermain and Invisible Man and Jekyll and Hyde, and they were all like they teamed up. It was like a superhero book.
Captain Nemo.
Captain Nemo.
awesome.
Best character.
Yeah, that was
His
very
big
funny,
gun.
yeah.
He loved to kill.
And they fought Moriarty, who was Sherlock Holmes' villain. I mean, that's just, he took the superhero aesthetic and he applied it to literature and made them all.
The most recent one dealt with the War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great. Kevin O'Neill.
Kevin O'Neill.
Yeah, very good.
Not
also,
very
so-
fast.
Yeah. But League was very good. Very good. So.
We also talked about From Hell in one of the issues a little while
The
back.
first episode,
which
yeah.
Connor's a big
Episodes,
episode.
yeah.
Big fan.
Also a movie made of that moved away from the source
Yeah,
material.
don't so much go with
I
that.
didn't mind the movie. But
That book's a tough book.
yeah.
It's not easy.
I love that book.
And then most recently,
Very controversial.
What the Kids.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're gonna go a little. It's after hours now.
Lost Girls, which is, as you can see, is a big, hefty, just
3-volume.
full of TNA. He calls it
And
pornography.
C and B.
It's porn. I'm gonna tell you, man. I flipped through it. I haven't read it yet. You guys have read it. I'm next to
I don't know
read
if you
it.
can classify without reading it.
It's porn.
He calls it porn from the point of view of. He calls it porn from the point of view of that he wants to own that word and have it not be a dirty thing. No, I mean not a dirty thing, but like from the point of view, just take
Right,
take for example, if you watch a
It's
movie,
erotica, really.
if you watch a movie
Ooh, it's erotica.
that's a horror movie and it is full of violent images, it's all just the most horrible ways you can think of to
Like
torture
Hostel or
somebody.
those modern-
Right. This is a sexual equivalent of that.
Well, what is the story? What is it?
Again, he's
Let's hear what it is first, and then we'll decide.
he's taken 3 characters from literature.
Public domain characters.
Public domain character. Oh, Peter Pan is sort of. Basically, it's Wendy from Peter Pan, Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and they all end up in a hotel in
Wait.
Austria right as World War I is about to break out. Now, right away, this doesn't sound like too much porn.
And they do it. A lot.
Yeah, but the idea is that as they each tell their story
Naked.
using the. That's really throwing me off. They each tell their story from the point of view of their story becomes a sexual awakening.
Yeah.
They tell their story while they're doing it.
But the point
Yes.
is, it's not what you think of as the Wizard of Oz is not actually the Wizard of Oz. It's her sexual awakening, and the Scarecrow and Tin Man and the Lion are actually the 3 guys she had sex with first.
Right.
And
Same with Peter
Same with
Pan and
Alice.
same with Alice in Wonderland.
Alice was basically a sexual slave to the woman known as the Queen of Hearts, but they don't ever come out and say it.
I feel dirty just talking about it.
You know what though? The really interesting thing is
prude.
what they do is he is. He's so look,
the
it makes him
irony.
uncomfortable. But the thing is, there's no taboo in this book. Basically, everything. Sorry, put it up there. Everything in it is okay. There's sex with kids. There's sex with parents. There's sex with this, and he actually makes the point to
Man,
say.
women, man.
And it's sex. I mean, it's graphic. I mean, it is.
You just can't get over that part.
I just,
I'm trying
no,
to
it cracks me.
explain
I'm going for the easy joke. It just
he
makes me laugh.
he takes the point of view that we're talking about this stuff and
Juvenile.
yeah, really. It's
No, not just all of us.
I know. We're just
Juvenile.
on 12.
takes the
No,
point
it's
of view
fine.
that
Boobies.
you can show these things and you can think about them. You can
Yes.
talk them like this is not really happening. I'm not really having sex with a kid. So is the idea of having sex with a kid illegal? I know that sounds awful.
Like, we
It
should
sounds-
stop talking about this right now.
So,
because-
no, but I'm saying this is the point that he makes in it. But this is actually what happens.
Right.
He said it's okay to fantasize but not do it.
We should stop talking about this right now.
I'm not going to show that page.
I'm not saying I am. I'm saying that's what he said.
I'm
We
not
should
a-
stop.
I'm not agreeing with his point of view on everything.
There's
but
also a lot about the British.
It is a
sexuality.
valid
British
point of view.
culture
And
and also the year, the time frame that takes place in. And
It takes place, and in the middle of the book, basically World War I breaks out. Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated, and
It's like act out
and
World War
that's
I.
in the background. Really, it's. There's what you think of it.
It's supposed to be really very good. From what I hear, I've yet to read it, but I plan
It
to.
definitely
very good.
it's worth a reading.
3 books worth.
I don't know if he was completely successful in it, but I understand what he's doing, and he's trying to explore sex in a way that we've very historically not.
Graphically.
The question is why is it okay to graphically
not-
explore violence but not graphically explore
Which
sex?
is a very good
But it's
point.
not porn in the fact that porn is there solely for titillation. Really, in this, he's doing.
Sorry. He's 12.
Oh, you're
It's
impressed.
the confluence of everything, and then you said titillation.
And Alan Moore is smart. But it's an exploration of the idea of why why is sex dirty and maybe it shouldn't be, or those kind of things. And it's certainly, whereas you're only meant to be aroused by pornography, there's no greater idea behind it. There's no anything like that. This does have literary value.
It's a story in that backdrop.
It's not really the
story's not so much important as the sex.
And there's dumb cliches and stuff in there where like you should come inside. Oh yes, you should. You know, like there's a lot of that.
Well, I'll come inside.
But he's playing in that milieu a lot.
This episode's gonna piss him off.
He's really nice.
He was, yeah. No, I've heard interviews and he's very nice.
All right, let's get
funny
to the
accent.
Let's move
Let's
on.
get to the point that pisses him off, Ron. You think Alan Moore's overrated?
I think he could be a little slightly overrated. Not in that I'm not arguing his talent. Obviously, the talent's there, and some of the things we didn't touch upon that was done, kind of his mid-'90s work, kind of like his work on Wildcats and Supreme and stuff like that. That was in the superhero milieu and that mess of the '90s, but it was still good, and I read that
Use
stuff.
my word milieu.
I did.
Okay.
But I read that stuff and I really did enjoy it. But I feel as if right now, somebody getting into comics or somebody not being in comics as long as we have, you hear the name Alan Moore and there's just a lot of baggage there. And there's a lot of, and it's like, to the point where you read something and if you don't really like it, you're like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I like it? You know what I mean? Like, and we've seen that on people who have posted on iFanboy.com, people who have written into us saying they're like, all right, Watchmen's not that great. I don't get it. You know, and the thing is that I think there's a tad bit of overratedness in that everything that comes out by him is gold, because honestly it isn't.
No.
I mean, I started buying the America's Best Comics when they came out. The
No, they weren't.
other titles we discussed, Tom Strong, Prometheus, stuff like that. I bought like the first few issues of Top 10. I dropped it.
You dropped Top 10?
I dropped Top 10, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I dropped
Have you
Top
ever
10.
read it all the way through?
No, I haven't read it all the way through because I dropped it.
No, well,
Yeah.
Prometheus was okay, top 10. You know, some
I dropped
strong-
Prometheus was
I dropped
boring.
Prometheus.
No, it wasn't.
Prometheus bored me to tears.
Well, the thing about America's Best Comics was he did something in all these different genres, so you didn't necessarily have to like all of them.
True.
There was stuff to pick
I didn't have to
and
like
choose
any of
from.
them.
Apparently, you didn't.
All right, no. Exactly. I like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I did enjoy that. I like the historical aspect, except I stopped buying that as well. I figured I'd buy it in an issue just because of the time frame. You know, I buy it in trade. But you know, I love From Hell. I love Watchmen. I love the Superman story, the Killing Joke. All that stuff is great. But I just don't think everything that comes from his quill is magic.
Well,
although maybe it is.
I think that
It's
there's
an
a
addition.
unplanned.
Well, I think earlier we talked about his work. We said how he did the definitive run of Swamp Thing. He did the definitive Joker story. He's wrapped up the Golden Age. And if someone's done all of these things, how can they be then overrated? Because if somebody does one of these things, it's considered a career. But if you've done multiple defining stories of different characters, then
Right, but that doesn't give you carte blanche that everything is great.
well, no, but no one
Which
says.
I feel as if it does.
But no one's saying everything is great. I agree with you too. I mean, I didn't read Tom Strong past like issue 3, and I didn't read. But
As a critic, I feel as if I will get a lot of shit if I say something by him is bad. Because of this, because of that, and that's
You're a critic?
somewhat
Okay.
a hackneyed critic.
Okay.
So
I think that there's another side of that when you want to talk about overratedness, is that if somebody tells you that something is the greatest thing over and over and over and over again, and then you
sullies
haven't
it.
read it, it does, because like for
The
example,
expectation's too high.
when I was in college and you're going to school and you're taking class on film and things like that, and they're telling you that Citizen Kane is the best thing since sliced bread, and then you watch Citizen Kane for the first time and you're like, you have to read about why it's great, and then eventually maybe you learn to appreciate it or don't.
that movie blew me away the first time I saw it, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Right, but it's the
Yeah,
same kind of thing. Where like such and such an album, like that happens in music all the time. This
Yeah.
album is the
Yeah.
greatest album ever. Like you should listen to Blonde on Blonde. Well, I don't want to do that.
Right.
You know, because it's not my taste or whatever.
Which I think happens with this stuff a lot. I think more so than we know. I think being as close to the material, we just kind of go with it. But I think as you go out in the strata of comics readers, I think that happens more often than you know.
I definitely do.
I think that's definitely true. But I think overall, I don't think you can call him overrated overall. No one is perfect every time out of the gate.
Right.
Everybody.
I think people
got
think
bad
he
work.
is. I think people think
I don't
he
know
is.
anybody thinks it's perfect.
I think it's.
No.
So, so.
But the thing is, I don't think he puts out bad work. I think he puts out stuff that isn't your taste, because he does so many different things.
Well, if it's
so
not
many
if it's
different
not your
styles.
taste, you don't like it. Then by definition, it's bad.
Right. I mean, this is a very subjective thing.
There's
I mean,
stuff that I don't like,
right.
but I don't think it's bad.
Right,
It's not for me.
Right. I mean,
Like some food I don't like because it's not something it does mean it's bad food.
well, it's personal taste and preference. Like go to your music thing. Like I don't like the Rolling Stones, so I think the records are bad. I don't like them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Rolling Stones are overrated and old.
That's quantifiable. They
Yeah,
are old.
exactly. So anyway,
well, old is
no matter what, there's a lot of stuff swirling around the name Alan Moore and a lot of opinions within there. So if you head over to iFanboy.com, you can share your opinion, what you like about Alan Moore and what you don't like about Alan Moore. Discuss it there on the site.
You can email us at contact@ifanboy.com. We can tell us your thoughts on Alan Moore or questions or comments. We might read some on the air.
You could even call our toll-free voicemail line
Yes.
at 888-FANBOYS, which is 326-2697. Leave us a voicemail. We will play it on this show or on our weekly audio podcast, which you can listen to the pick of the week at ifanboy.com.
Yeah. So until next week, go check out Lost Girls. It's hot.
18 and older.
Welcome to iFanboy, the video podcast.